Then additionally, when you do lease purchase deals, we require a minimum of 5% down. So, we'll get $10,000 to $30,000 depending on the deal before a tenant moves in. So they have skin in the game, and it's almost like a property flip that you don't owe taxes on until they move out or cash you out of the deal. So we fell in love with the lease purchase model and ended up shifting 95% of our deals from doing all these flips to doing these buy and holds and really diving deep on going after the long-term financial freedom, but doing it in a way that worked for us,
All right, this episode of the Real Estate Law Podcast, we're going to be talking about financial freedom and your pathway toward it. Hint, hint, real estate is a great way to get there. We have an amazing guest on who's going to tell us a story as to how he's worked toward having this life where he's able to kind of dictate his time without sacrificing, anything with his personal life. We have spoken about financial freedom on this podcast frequently, Rory, and I know that some of the same themes that have come up over and over are probably some things we're going to talk about today, but I do love digging into people's stories such as this to find how other people have achieved financial freedom in their lives, how they're aspiring to do that, what changes they're making that are putting them on this pathway. Is that right?
Yeah, and I just, I want to remind our listeners about the difference between active and passive, engagement in real estate. We highlight some great active ways to be involved in real estate, as an agent, as a professional, as an innovator. But really the dream lies in developing something that's sustainable and passive. And there are a variety of ways to do that too, but I'm really looking forward to hearing what he has to say today.
Yeah, let's welcome Jim Manning. Jim comes to us from St. Louis, Missouri. Jim is also the host of the Passive Wealth Show and the founder and CEO of Doorway Properties. Jim, welcome.
Jason, Rory, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. And to all of you guys listening in, what a wealth of knowledge these two are. So I totally get why you guys have had as many episodes as you have and the following that you've had. But yeah, just from St. Louis, Missouri, and I've been doing this a little bit. 2006 was when I started studying real estate investing. So I just turned 40. I feel like a grandpa, even though I'm just right in the middle age, I guess.
Well,
right.
I hope I'm in the middle age and I'm older than you. So, I'm not sure what to say about that. You're a baby in my mind.
Yeah.
So, I was reading your bio, Jim, and it mentioned that you were working for a self-made billionaire, but he was not super thrilled with how things are going in his life. Maybe you could tell us that story of what you learned from that. Maybe the lesson is that money can't buy happiness if you don't have happiness elsewhere. But tell us what you learned from working for him and how that put you on this pathway.
Yeah. So it was, thanks, Jason. So it was an internship, and it was right after out of college. And what we were doing was we were inventorying the guy's wine collection. And it took 3 of us 2 weeks to inventory this guy's wine collection. What we did was we printed out a label for what it was. We took a bottle of wine out of his collection and we stuck the label on the bottle of wine. At one point I had $250,000 in my hands, and it took 3 guys 2 weeks to do this. That's how much wine this guy had, right? And I don't know if you guys had the similar experience, but when I was in college, my main thing was just chugging beer and having a good time, and kind of the typical fraternity guy thing. And I the one thing that I wish I had done was enjoyed some of the alcohol we drank. We were driving on private jets, drinking $1,000 bottles of Krug champagne, and fraternity 22-year-old Jim was just chugging it like I was at the frat house, right? So, lessons that you learn growing up. But anyway, as you can imagine, any 22-year-old, you meet somebody that has had that wealth, and 2 things really happened for me. One was I was like, well, I'm shaking this guy's hand. He's just a person. He's self-made. He did it on his own. Well, like, America's amazing. Like that was my moment where, like, does a fish know what's in water? That was my moment where I realized, wow, this is what's possible in America. What an amazing country that we live. And then as I was idolizing this guy, I met his gorgeous girlfriend, and I was half his age, the whole thing. And, but we were at his house and we were inventorying his wine. And the first week, this guy's incredible. Then the second week came around and I realized, whoa, this guy is one of the most miserable human beings I've ever met. He's completely unhappy. He has all the things in the world, but he gave up everything to get them. And, so like that had such a impact on me that, I began thinking about, okay, well, why don't I measure my success by what I gave up to get it? Why don't I think through this thing? And then it sparked something in me. Hey, he did it, I can do it. Why don't I try and do something great? Why don't I try and create something? And real estate investing is what I fell in love with. I fell in love with the idea of taking a property that needed repairs, fixing it up, and creating a home for a family. And if you get really good at it, you can make a lot of money at it at the same time. So like all doing good for the community and doing financially well at the same time. And so then got into real estate, but I never lost sight of that. Like, hey, how can I do this in a way that doesn't cost me everything in the process? Like, what can I do for that? So it was very a very unique, amazing experience to be able to have as a 22-year-old. I mean, and one of my best friends got a job, so he wasn't able to go. I was just the fill-in even on it, and it had such a dramatic impact on my life. So really cool.
Yeah. That's one of the questions we ask later on, which we're probably not going to have to ask, is tell us something that happened early in your life or career that impacts the way you're working today. And frankly, that story right there, probably satisfies the answer to that question, where you met this gentleman. When you said you had $250K in your hand, was that worth of wine or cash?
Oh, I'm sorry, worth of wine.
Wow. It's weird though, like having $250K cash in my hand also, it just, money in your hand feels like it's worth more than equity and property or like net worth. Like you see these numbers on paper, but then you put $500 in my hand, you're like, oh my God, it's $500, right? I don't know why that tangible feeling of money feels different. And you had the tangible feeling of wine. I couldn't imagine $250,000 worth of wine in my hand. Like, Rory and I we're not that highbrow. We certainly enjoy wine. But I think a vintage that we like is one of the midnight blends or something of the box wine, the Boda box. I don't think you had too many of those there, right?
I was surprised. I was like 22-year-old kid. Like I'm surprised looking back. I was trusted with that to like be carrying all that expensive wine. Luckily, I didn't drop it because my net worth at the time was zero. So that would have been an expensive mistake. You break it, you buy it.
So along the way in your, and we could hear a little bit more about how you kind of found your way in the real estate investing world. But one of the questions that I have, is what did you notice with all of those years of buying real estate and investing in real estate, and the people that were around you? Like, what were they doing wrong that you might have learned to do correctly? Like, are there any steps that you noticed that others took that held them back when you were able to accelerate?
Wow, what a wonderful question. So what makes this unique is the scale of deals that we've been able to accomplish. Like a lot of the people around us, when you're doing single family, maybe you do 3 to 10 deals a year. And, we got up to, we've done over 3,500 deals now. There's 3 real estate companies we're running now, and and 2 real estate funds. So there's been this volume that we've been able to achieve. And I think if you circle back to how did we get there, and and how do we, 2016 we had 250 flips going at the same time that we owned, right? And the interesting thing about it is one of the bottlenecks that we encountered was capital. And the first deal we did, we got 100%. Ryan Wessels is my business partner, and I, we got 100% loan on the purchase price from a high net worth individual, and then we self-funded what the repairs were. And so we did that for a couple of years. I did one deal my first 18 months, started out very slow, and then we were able to build it to where we were doing 3 or 4 flips at a time. And then we hit a roadblock where we made 3 mistakes. So we owned 3 houses that we were reinvesting all the profits to grow the organization into these properties. And I had to start living on credit card debt. And these properties that weren't sitting, it was like, oh my gosh, I have $30,000 in the first property. I have $15,000 in the next. I have 10 in the next. I need to sell the $30,000 one because the one I have less money in is going to lose 10 grand. And like, I can't afford, like I got into a situation where like we had to not only sell these stalled properties, but we had to sell them in the right order to get the amount of money back that we had to offset the losses on some of them. And as we were going through that incredibly painful experience that really almost broke us, we almost failed to launch after that. What I realized was that the capital was restraining us from really scaling and growing. And we had built a track record with a couple high net worth individuals to lend us 100% of the purchase price. Well, why couldn't they just lend us 100% of everything? And so then when we did that, we're like, whoa, well, if we don't put our own capital in it, we can keep it in cash reserves so we don't encounter that same position. And the amount of deals we can do is only a limited amount of capital that we can raise. So for a guy that started out with 0, now it's like, oh, okay, well, now I just need to schmooze with some people that have money that don't necessarily have time. And so the awareness of that is that in real estate and investing, the best partnership that I've been able to find is you have a money partner and a hustle partner. The hustle partner's job is to do everything. The money partner's job is to bring capital, not necessarily do anything. And a lot of the partnerships that I see fail are when 2 parties bring the similar skill sets to the table. Or maybe it's 2 partners that don't have money and they decide to join forces. Well, that's great, but then now you need a third partner to bring you to bring you some capital to be able to do the property flips. You can do wholesale. There's ways to invest in real estate without bringing capital. But if you're talking about growing an organization, the capital's going to be necessary to do that. So, yeah.
Rory, what book is Jim describing? Is that Traction?
I'm not a big Traction follower, but the idea
with the visionary and the implementer.
I believe that is Traction. Yes, we have to have take the there are 3 roles. I believe you take the 3 roles and you put them together, and it makes a complete leadership team.
Right. So, Jim, you're the capital raiser, or were you the go-getter guy?
When we were starting out, gosh, I haven't even thought about that for a while. We both did capital raise, and we did. Our skill sets were very different, though. I'm kind of like the nice guy. I would attract people to our team, get people motivated to work on our projects, and then Ryan was more the accountability piece. The hey, we need to get stuff done kind of guy, right? And it was a really good synergy because I knew contractors would walk all over me, take advantage of me, and more so than Ryan, right? So we had a really good thing going there. But the capital raise kind of was a little bit of both of us. In the early years, he actually did it a little bit more than I did, and I do it a little bit more now. But anyway, so what's interesting about it is, we talk about active and passive investing. I think people with capital a lot of times forget, like, hey, I can be an investor. I don't have to do any work. I just have to find the right, I can find Jim Manning as a 22-year-old and invest with him and make some good money there, or I can find a more established Jim Manning that's 40 that's operating a real estate fund, and like I can use that as my value add, and I don't have to like do everything and do all the work that's required to be an active real estate investor.
So for people listening who want to kind of get down this path, like how does one find these high net worth individuals? You mentioned that raising capital is was a bottleneck. It probably is a bottleneck in many situations. But what are the first steps that somebody should take in order to start raising some of this money?
So one of the things that we did was we developed a presentation just explaining who we are. Not long. I'd recommend that it's 15 minutes or less. Like, what's the company name? Who are you? What's your experience? And then we would ask people we knew, whether it was our dads or cousins or uncles or best friends' parents, like just people we know. Hey, I'm working on this presentation. I'm looking to grow a real estate business. Would you be willing to give me advice on the presentation? Because the people that know you are willing to help you 100 out of 100 times. The people that know you, if you just go in asking for money right away, they're going to be very leery of that. So then they can give you advice on the presentation, and they might be interested in it, but it gives them a very safe out, because they're not going to, if it's your nephew, you're not going to want to tell your nephew no. So you're probably not going to take that meeting, right? But if you're there to like provide value and teach your nephew on, hey, you could have done this or that better, then at that point it's okay to say, if you don't want to invest, then you don't have to invest. You were there for a different reason. And then at the end of it, you just say, hey, well, this is what we're working on. Do you know of anyone that would be interested in this investment opportunity? And then at that point, they raise their hand if they are, or they have a friend that they just had coffee with that is interested.
I've heard at many networking events and other places, a lot of private lenders suggest that it's really important to them that the person they're partnering with has skin in the game, meaning that they have some money in the same transaction as well. It sounds like you've been able to overcome that objection and allow, find some private funding for an entire deal. How do you instill trust in the private lender so that they are willing to fund the entire deal?
Yeah, so here's the thing. We started out self-funding all of the repairs, right? So like we did have, if we bought $100,000 house, but it was a $50,000 remodel, yeah, we had a lot of skin in the game on that, right? But I mean, the thing is like, as you start to build more credibility and more experience, like now what I can do is I can look somebody in the eye and say, hey, we've had private lenders since 2006. It's been on over $250 million in real estate, and we have 100% success rate on our promised returns. So like, it's really the experience and the track record of what we've done. Now you do want to avoid the word guarantee, like that's illegal. SEC will get mad at you if they find out that you're doing that. But in the past, it has been 100% success rate. So like I don't use the word guaranteed on it. And then, it just kind of builds, and the better the experiences you do, the better the story that you develop, the more of an attractive investment that you become. Right. Like, and then the easier it becomes, and capital raising is not easy, guys. It's arguably the most difficult thing to do in business. But you might need to do you might need to do a couple of years worth of hard money loans before, to get that under your belt and say, hey, well, we've done these 5 other properties. Now it's time for me to do some private lending with people. And we got fortunate that a couple of guys gave us a shot when they maybe shouldn't have, looking back, but they liked us, and then we were able to, so we didn't have to ever use hard money loans. But if we didn't get lucky like that and get a shot from people looking to just support young entrepreneurs, then we would have had to go the hard money lending route.
Do you think that hard money loans is kind of the intermediary between people doing this on their own and then doing it at the level where you're raising capital through, private funds? Do people have to kind of go through that hard money period, or is that just kind of always available and you just opt out of it because you now have a good network of people that will fund your projects?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's a very useful to have an approval with somebody if you get a really amazing deal and then you have 2 weeks to close. Even if you have private money, it may make sense. Like if it's already out on a different deal, like the hard money lending might make sense to use if you got a good enough deal, right? Like we have a hard money lending company now, and there's times where if we get a good enough deal, and depending on what our capital allocation is, we may use a hard money lending company on a deal even now. So both, like both are good to have.
Let's talk about the financial freedom element of this, because, a lot of what you're doing also is teaching people how to go about doing this and to kind of take their own destiny in their reins, whether they're working for themselves or working for somebody else and deploying their money. So what does that mean to you? Like, why did you find this to be important in your life as you went through the experience of working for the high net worth individual to where you are today? And then at what point did you decide that this should be taught and explained to other people?
Oh, great. So let's get back to the story. I think it might make sense to just continue the story because I think we'll get there on the question. But then, we'll have to get to the podcast too, for sure. So then so 2016 comes by and we build up this organization. We had that bottleneck the first 4 years, figure it out. We're scaling, we're growing, we're doing all these deals. And 2016 to 2017, we were used to doing about 100 flips. And then we doubled it to 250 just in a 12-month span. And we're running around like our heads are cut off. We're feeling miserable, frantic, like, oh my gosh, we have all these deals. We had 3 full-time construction managers. They all hate us. They're like, you've given us 10 years worth of work here, guys. We're not used to this. Then at the end of the year, as we start we sell some of the properties off, we look at our books. We're like, holy cow, we just made less money than we did the year before when we did half the deals. And the saving grace on that year was we did buy the properties right. But when you buy a property right, but then you're not able to touch it for 6 to 8 months, that's holding costs, insurance, and if you don't figure that in, well, all the profit margins just shrink. And instead of making $20K a deal or $30K a deal, I forget what our average was since it was 8 years ago or whatever. Now you're making 20% of what your normal margin is. There was profitability there, but at the end of the day, it was like there's no way that it was worth that. And one of the things I did was I wanted to get into real estate for the financial freedom aspect. I really liked the ability to be able to be in control and have that passive income. And along the way, we were buying rental properties. But one of the mistakes we made was I remember looking on the multiple listing service and literally everything on there was a good deal to buy as a rental. Whoa, these are all cash flowing. Then Ryan and I looked at each other and we're like, well, we don't want to be landlords and we don't have the money to be able to do it. So let's not do it. Well, sure enough, we should have done it because of what happened on that run if you were buying in 2010, right? But one of the mistakes we made there, though, is we could have partnered with a money partner. So money shouldn't be a reason why you don't do or don't buy long-term buy and holds. But the landlord thing, like being a landlord, there are a lot of negative things to it. I own two families, and last year I got hit with $20,000 in repairs and maintenance on those. It's well, that's for my 2 families. That's another 18 months worth of cash flow on those deals. So it's okay, I'm gonna have zero passive income for the next couple of years and from those entities. And so we were picking up some, but it was more of a passive thing. And then when we did all those deals and made less money, it was why we're a hamster on the hamster wheel. We're just not making any progress anymore. The initial goal was the financial freedom, but we had already built our revenue up to a certain point, And if we double down on generating more revenue, what are we doing? We're just generating more taxable income, and that we then need to just reinvest and do more flips with. Like we weren't actually making as much progress as we should have been to the financial freedom. And then we discovered what lease purchase deals were. Jason Corney is now a business partner of ours. He brought us those deals, and what's wonderful about a lease purchase is the way we have them set up is our tenants pay for all the repairs and maintenance. So, one of the real estate funds we own specializes in these deals. We had 100 properties in the fund, and we had 40 the first 3 quarters. This was last year. We had $4,500 of repairs and maintenance. That's 100 properties versus the two families I just mentioned. They had $20,000 of repairs and maintenance. So by not having the repairs and maintenance, that actually generates more control over passive income. Then additionally, when you do lease purchase deals, we require a minimum of 5% down. So, we'll get $10,000 to $30,000 depending on the deal before a tenant moves in. So they have skin in the game, and it's almost like a property flip that you don't owe taxes on until they move out or cash you out of the deal. So we fell in love with the lease purchase model and ended up shifting 95% of our deals from doing all these flips to doing these buy and holds and really diving deep on going after the long-term financial freedom, but doing it in a way that worked for us,
Rory, have you worked on lease purchase deals, or what's your familiarity with that term?
Now, let's back up a second. Just explain to us, what you mean by a lease purchase deal, and then I'll kind of pepper you a little bit with some of the legalities of that. But can you explain to us a little bit what you mean by a lease purchase deal?
Yeah, and there's different ways to do it depending on the state you're in. Like lease purchase deals in Texas, I think you have to do contract for deed, where you can do a similar structure. But so rent to own's another. Like sometimes people use lease purchase and rent to own synonymously. There are little nuances that are different. That Google it, guys, if you want to know the differences. I don't think it's important for this conversation, but basically what we do is we do a lease purchase contract with our tenants, and they're responsible for the repairs and maintenance. They put a down payment on it, and then they have then they can, as long as they're making their payments, they can end up owning the house outright. How our model's set up. But a common way to do lease purchase deals is to say, hey, you have 3 years to execute on your lease purchase agreement. If you don't execute on it, I'm going to kick you out of the property and do another lease purchase deal with a new tenant. That's another common way people do them as well.
How often do the people that sign these lease purchase deals actually end up purchasing the property?
It's less than 5%. Okay. End up doing it. Yeah.
So it essentially moves a lot of the burden of the maintenance over to the tenant, and in more times than not, the tenant's basically not going to purchase the property afterwards. Then you kind of take it back and you do another lease purchase for somebody else that gives them the opportunity to purchase it. But again, 95% of the time, they're not going to do that.
Yeah, and I mean, in our there is a little bit of ickiness that can come to this model. And what I mean by that is if 2 adults enter into a contract that says, hey, you have 2 years to do this deal, and if you don't, you're out, and I get your down payment money, I don't have a problem with that. I think you can legally do that. The problem I have with it is that myself as a real estate professional, if I know someone has a 0% chance of executing in 2 years, repairing their credit and getting it to where it needs to be, I have just from a moral standpoint, I have issues with that to just try and make money. So what we did to solve for that is as long as they're making their payments, we're not going to ever kick somebody out of the property. So they can, over 30 years, they could end up owning the house outright, just like a normal buyer would.
And they end up kind of just renting, essentially, if they decide to leave. They were just a renter, basically, that was paying additional for maintenance.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the Passive Wealth Show. So you launched that. How many episodes in are you?
Oh, I was maybe about 10 months ago or so. We just had our 100th episode, and it's what sparked it was a conversation I had with my dad, and this was during COVID. He said, "Hey, Jim, I'm afraid of running out of money before I die." And it's like, wait, what? Dad, what are you talking about? He was like, "Aren't you a self-made millionaire?" And he's like, "Well, yeah. My mom's a teacher. Dad is an IT, upper middle class family. They did well. We went to the Lake of the Ozarks. For those of you that have seen the show Ozark, we didn't go to like Europe every year on vacation, So like lived very much beneath our means. And anyway, just in his 70s, self-made millionaire, but with the stock market kind of going up and down and being uncertain during COVID, he just had a little bit of a freak out moment. And then at the time, I was looking at myself and the blessings that real estate has done for us. And I realized, wow, at half my dad's age, I could set myself up for retirement and I wouldn't be worried at all. And if you think about it, it's because retirement, like we're sold by the financial industry that retirement's a nest egg problem. Hey, you need $5 million in your retirement account. You need 10 million, you need 20 million, depending on what your lifestyle is. And that's great if we knew the day we were going to die and if we knew when we were going to go into a retirement home and all that, but we don't know that. And so to me, retirement's a income problem. It's not a nest egg problem. And so that really, I felt called to open up the Passive Wealth Show and just from some of the realizations too, like we have high net worth individuals that have been investing with us now for the last decade and a half, that they put money in, they don't do any of the work, it's from their couch, and they're financially free. And just trying to get the word out there and help people expand their minds to, hey, there's more than one way to do it. The world's round, it's not square, like the financial industry might want us to believe. And the setup of the financial industry is so interesting because they are incentivized for us to work as long as possible. If you're a doctor or an attorney like Rory, the longer you work, the longer you have income that's going into your retirement accounts, the bigger your assets under management are and the bigger the fees the financial advisors get. So they're not actually incentivized to have us retire as early as possible. And, like passive income, it's nice because if you invest in a way that generates you passive income, that can fuel your car. But what your total net worth is, that only thing that fuels is your ego. Like there's no actual like use for it, right? And so the show is really meant to be hey, let's talk about things. Let's talk about things like impact investments and how not only can you get to financial freedom, but you can start to think in a way that and invest in a way that has positive impact. Like guys, when we invest into like these global funds and index funds and all that, it's a great way to make money. But like what we're forgetting is that capital can have a tremendous influence on the world too. So like think about like Christopher Columbus. There's parts of the world that speak Spanish now because the King of Spain backed his expedition. That was capital that went into a business, you could say, or an explorer, right? And then he discovered certain parts of the world that now then Spain ended up being a part of it and literally changing the language that was spoken in these sections of the world. And so when we talk about impact investments, it's, well, how do we do good and make money at the same time? How do we use our capital for financial freedom and for influence? And that's one of the things I love about the lease-purchase structures too, actually, is some of the feel-good stories. Like one of our clients was in a situation where their credit got dinged because of medical bills for their special needs kid. And they had paid off all the medical bills, and now they're in a situation where their kid needs the Lindbergh School District, but there's Lindbergh School District's highly desirable area in St. Louis, and there's hardly any properties to rent. They can afford a home, but they didn't plan on their kid getting sick, so they got behind on the bills. And when it can take 7-8 years to repair your credit. And they didn't have the 7 to 8 years. So we were able to put them into our program. They got into the school district they needed. We win because we have a cash flowing asset. It just creates like a beautiful win-win for the community. And so anyway, so like that's a lot of the stuff we focus on the Passive Wealth Show.
Yeah.
As I vomited on you, my apologies there. But yeah.
What have you learned from 100 episodes of doing a podcast, being the host, producer, whatever your title would be?
It's funny how much there is in real estate. Like I mean, I've been doing this a long time, but I'm just feel like I'm scratching the surface of all the stuff that you can do, all the different strategies, and what works for one person might not work for another. To me, listen more and ask better questions, I think. And I think it's a beautiful way to connect, meet people, and provide value for people listening in, wanting to hear stories,
Yeah. Rory, what have you learned from doing a couple hundred episodes of our show?
I mean, no matter how much, even if you dedicate all your professional life to real estate and you're an investor and you have come at it at these different angles, there's still so much more to know and learn. People are coming at this with all different perspectives, all different ideas, all different niches. So there's always something. We're now over 200 episodes in, and everybody's a little bit different. And I walk away from each one of these interviews thinking about a different way to approach real estate, even though it's what I do full time.
Yeah. We kind of hope that our audience, the theme that they take is that there's no one specific way that you could make money using real estate. The law in our title suggests that we also do it the right way. We try to do things legally and through the advice of, this is not legal advice. However, we have an attorney on the podcast that, ask questions about, contracts and ways things should be done. But what we have learned also is that, there's no one way to do it. And, we talk to, people that are promoting passive investing or funds, or, fix and flips, short-term rentals like we do. And there's lots of different magical ways that you could actually make money and, not have to work for somebody else on their own schedule if that was the goal, which is the goal of many people that get into the real estate investing. You work with people, Jim, who, if you're raising money from them, either they're self-made entrepreneurs or they're, high net worth individuals that have worked a long time in a certain field and saved up a lot of money and now want that money to go work for them, but maybe they're continuing to work. A lot of people that are like your age or younger who are listening to podcasts such as this, they're saying, I don't want to go work for somebody. Like, I want my money, to be working for me, and real estate is the vehicle to do that. So, it's interesting to hear, your story. You hear lots of stories on your podcast about how to do it. And, one theme that we're all kind of suggesting is there's not one specific way to do it. So, if you're listening, and try to figure out what the formula is, we encourage you to listen to more of our episodes and more episodes of podcasts like Jim's Passive Wealth Show, to be able to get different perspectives and find out exactly kind of what the right angle is for you and what works for you and your life.
Yeah, and it's good to have diversification into it too. Like, everyone talks about diversification being a good thing, but you can be very diversified in real estate. Like, get some vacation rentals, get some lease purchase deals, get some storage units, and you name it, right? Like there's a lot of different ways to do it, a lot of different risk profiles. And hey, I appreciate you guys having me on. Thank you so much.
I'm just waiting for people to remix it and have storage units as vacation rentals. I'm not sure how well those can
Oh, tiny home vacation rental storage units.
Yeah. Jim, since we already asked one of the questions that we ask all of our guests on the podcast that come on, let me just throw one more out there. If you can get on stage for half an hour and talk about any subject in the world, not this, but something else, without any preparation, what would that be?
Ooh, without any preparation, and it has to be outside of real estate.
It could be something that you just, that weird thing deep down that more than almost anyone else.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would talk about my story and just some of the ways I've had to overcome adversity and how important it is, like your mindset is around that, and thinking positively, like, and just kind of share people my truth. And, a big part of my story is, as I've gone down the rabbit hole is, my faith has grown, and, my priorities now are God, family, and then work, and, just kind of sharing, and that's no judgment for me. I lived a lot of my life with limited faith, and, it's just things have happened in my life that have caused me to believe in God, and so it just, I guess, really be more of a story of some of the challenges and the story of my life.
And the common theme there is wine, because there's an awful lot of wine in the Bible. So I think there's the thread that brings it from your life to your life now.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So Jim is the host of the Passive Wealth Show. We'll put links to that in the show notes. And Jim, is there anywhere else that people can get a hold of you in the easiest manner?
Oh, yeah, that's great. Yeah, so if you go to the Passive Wealth Show, there's a Calendly link thing if you wanted to talk to me, or depending on when you get this, it might be one of my team members. But yeah, just fill out the form there. We can talk on active investing, passive investing, lease purchase deals, private lending.
Yep.
You name it. And I like to be a resource for people because, I did one deal in my first 18 months, guys. And one of the big reasons why I slowed down was I had to be the guy that knew it. So I took all these online courses. I didn't want to go to any different local RIAs. I didn't want to ask any questions to people that knew it because I didn't want to be the guy that didn't know. And my ego got in my way. And it wasn't until I started asking questions from other experienced investors and getting the help I needed when I was working on deals that we started taking off. So I'd love to pay it back. A lot of people have helped me along the way. And if I can help anybody listening in, would love to help you any way I can. So.
All right. Well, thank you for that. And Rory, where can people get a hold of you?
Come find me in my law firm. It's Urban Village Legal, urbanvillagelegal.com.
All right. If you've enjoyed the episode, we love 5-star reviews. We love all your comments. We read everything. And all the other episodes are up on YouTube. They are on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. And then, of course, on our website, realestatelaw.podcast.com, where you can fill out our lead form, which also tells us that you want to be on the podcast. Tell us who you are, what you want to talk about. We'll see if we get you scheduled. Jim, Rory, thank you so much for the conversation today. It's been a pleasure to get to know you. We look forward to many more episodes of your show, The Passive Wealth Show. And thank you for listening. See you next time.